Here we go. Here we go. Here another show. Ready to go.
Intellectual property notice is up there, Pete. Thank you for joining us for the Rebel's Edge, folks. I'm John Najarian. He is Pete Najarian, actually that way. I always forget because it's opposite. Pete is over there. And Jared is putting up all the signs, the timers, in this case, bull kicking the Bears' butt, because yesterday we had the S&P drop 12, but today it's up 41. So the bull pretty much giving them the horns, as they say.
They are. I'll tell you what, the NASDAQ has been much more interesting than I would have expected in terms of performance, John. It's just been, given the backdrop, and we've seen it get hit pretty hard. I mean, the month of August, it's down significantly, but yesterday, pretty nice bounce back, actually. So interesting to watch.
Yeah, well, that's because your 10-year bond. We'll talk about that in a sec. But let's talk about J-Pow, Pete, in the macro minute, because he's going to be talking about the usual stuff from Jackson Hole. We will keep at it until we are confident the job is done. And my question is, was he referring to the amount of margaritas being consumed at the Mangy Moose, or was he talking about the U.S. economy?
All good questions. I don't know that we have the perfect answers to those. Yeah, that's going to be a big one, John. That's something we're all looking forward to. Something that's front and center, and I'll throw it in the macro category, is the volatility index, which has been in a very, very tight range of late. And it's interesting because we might pop up there like we did the other day. We almost hit 19. We immediately retract and pull back. So the reality is we're basically in a volatility environment. Let's just call it 16. And so very, very tight. It's obviously wider than that, but close to close, we're looking very close to a 16, maybe 16 and a half sort of deal. So just expect these 1% moves, but the violent moves have not really stuck very well of late. And so that's why I think we're seeing this volatility in the right spot where it is right now, close to a 16.
Yep. And volatility, folks, is what causes the premiums in option contracts to be either higher if volatility is up or lower premiums if volatility is down. That's the basic thing you need to understand about volatility. It's a risk premium. All right. Let's talk, Pete, about the fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
Well, fantastic futures. The 10-year, which hit 436 yesterday, Pete, is trading down to 421 today. So that's my fantastic future.
I'm going to throw out something that we haven't talked about in a long time for the right reasons. It's not been worth even covering, but gold, John. It's one of these things where we've seen a little bit more activity of late in the unusual option side of things. In GDX, we've seen that. We've seen some Newmont. We've seen some positives and some negatives. I would just say this. Back in March, it was 1910. By April, it was 2055 in terms of the pricing of gold. And then it fell right back down. So it looks to me like every time we get very close to 1910, 1915, that seems to be a buy point, at least for now, with a nice run of maybe 40 or 50 points to the upside. On Friday, we got all the way up to 1950. So interesting to watch how this has been trading. And I think we should all at least just keep an eye on gold, maybe even on silver as well, because precious metals are another spot that tells you something about the economy as well.
Very true. The precious metals also, just like the cryptos, have competition from the treasuries. But when the treasury yield is down, as it is today, people tend to look for alternatives, and obviously silver and gold, two of those. All right, Pete, let's talk about Peloton, which you've said many times is the most expensive clothes hanger anybody can buy. And that's why it says faulty Peloton still dries clothes. They talked, Pete, about a seat post issue.
Yeah.
And that's a scary headline too. It's like, what's wrong with the seat posts? They can't get enough of them, apparently. And they're having to replace the ones that were defective.
Yeah.
And they said that basically replacing those seat posts through a recall, as well as maybe some growth not being what people expected, was why the stock's down double digits, over 20% to the downside today, Pete.
John, this has been one of the more remarkable things to watch because so many people were pushing back on me and on you because you've been on this as well. But the idea that it's the most expensive clothes hanger, because it is. I mean, the reality is this. During the pandemic, yes, everybody was at home. They weren't going to gyms. And as I said to Wapner many times, I go, hey, look, the reality is people are social and they want to be in something that inspires them to do more. And it doesn't mean the entire world wants to do that, but most do. And now it's been playing out time and time again as we've gone through these earnings. These earnings were absolutely awful. I mean, when you look at these numbers, John, they're expecting to lose money anyway, 38 cents. They only lost 68 cents. It's like, well, holy crap, you guys can't get anything right. They're talking about the fact that their free cash flow levels, that's becoming a little bit of something that they're keeping an eye on. The stock hit a brand new record low of 505. And subscriber growth is waning. Well, that doesn't sound so great. Then, oh, by the way, just as an extra kicker, you've got that recall on the seats that you had brought up. I mean, you throw all this together and then they say, the outlook doesn't look all that great either. It's like, really? I mean, honestly, this is an issue. At some point, there is a value. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But I'm not even sure if we've hit that point yet, John. But maybe we're getting close.
Well, last time it was that Amazon might buy them, Pete.
Yeah.
And Amazon never confirmed that, but that was the rumor. And now you've got third parties selling these things. They're used bikes, probably very lightly used bikes on a whole host of websites. That's hurting sales as well. And you know what, Pete? We had unusual activity in this one.
Oh, that's right.
And do you think they were buying upside calls? No, they were buying puts. Look at that in the middle of your screen. They were buying the 7.5 puts, and then they bought yesterday the 6 puts, Pete. And those puts went from what, 20 cents to $1, like that. That's a pretty good trade. It's not a 10x, but that's a 5x trade, and that'll work. And if you want a BOGO, you go to marketrebellion.com/bang, and you get a BOGO. That means you buy 1 month, we give you the second month on us. So I would encourage you guys to go do that.
Yep.
All right, Pete, enough time on Peloton. What about Foot Locker? Oh, but wait, there's more. Foot Locker also had unusual put activity. And this one was a 10x, Pete, because they were buying these puts in Foot Locker just ahead of the earnings, and they were buying them at the 20 strike. And they only paid like 35 cents for them, Pete. They closed yesterday at 45 cents. So you made a dime during the day yesterday, but you knew the earnings were today. They came out with earnings. They were horrific. The stock fell over 30%, and those puts went to $5 from 45 cents. So that is a true 10x trade, Pete.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, another 52-week low. I mean, just like with we were seeing out of Peloton. And it makes some sense, John. If you looked at shoes lately, and there's a reason why Nike's down 3% today as well, I would say, because those things move somewhat in tandem, not 100%, but certainly there is some correlations there. But, you know, when you've got $140 shoes out there in the economy that we've got, people watching what they're buying, and they're trying to be more careful, and that's why they're going to discounters and everything else. I mean, there's a reason, and there's a reason why Foot Locker's numbers look like they did. Comp sales, John, down 9.5%. Sales themselves down 9.9%. Gross margins, you can only imagine what the gross margins are when they've got to throw out all these promotions just to get some of these sales. So Foot Locker's definitely in a world of hurt right now, and they're going to need the economy to get back. But by the way, I wanted to point something out. You skipped past Apellis Pharma. We got to jump back to that one now.
Oh, did I skip past it?
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. I did. Well, by the way, unusual activity in both Foot Locker and Apellis Pharma. So Apellis Pharma, which is APLS, up big. And guess what? They were buying upside calls in this one. I know it sounds crazy, Pete, but another opportunity for people that want to go get a BOGO, if you go to marketrebellion.com/bang, you'll get a BOGO. Buy one, get one free. And this one, Pete, Apellis identified a potential culprit behind some eye inflammation issues. And I guess it was that the syringe they were using was the wrong size. That's not on Apellis, but on some of the doctors. But Apellis discovered that if you went from like whatever it was, an 18 millimeter to a 19 millimeter, it didn't inflame the eye. And they only had one incident out of 100,000 tests if you used the right prescribed sort of delivery system for those medicines. And that was fabulous for them. And that's why the stock's up so big.
That and the fact that they have a large short interest, so that helps a little bit of a squeeze play there, John, as well. And as you said, they identified what the problem was. That's a great thing because they need all the help they can get. They've got a big cash burn rate. That's pretty high, so that's something that would be a little bit concerning. And I just throw that out there so people understand. You've got a set amount of money out there, and then when you've got the cash, and then usually we say, free cash flow. Well, unfortunately for Apellis, the flow is out, and they've got to get stuff out into the market as well. And when you look at the preclinical, they're there in phase 1, but there's not a whole lot in the phase 3 or going into the public itself. So they've really got to have something like this. They've got to have drugs that are getting out there so they can get some of that free cash flow in a positive way. So keep that in mind. So this is a great company. They're doing really great work, but they have a fairly light pipeline, and most of it is in the early stages. So this is a very, very important drug for them to have.
Yep. Came at the right time for them, and it came at the wrong time for the shorts, Pete.
For sure.
But we don't usually hear about a lot of weeping over shorts, especially on this show. But the shorts are right. Look at the first two, Foot Locker and Peloton. The shorts were right in those two, Pete.
Yeah.
All right. What about Abercrombie and Fitch? This might be another one that the shorts didn't do so well on because Abercrombie raised their sales forecast today for the second quarter, and they easily beat estimates. This one up pretty good, Pete, but obviously I'm not trying to read too much into it when we have, Foot Locker down big, Peloton down big, but this one up. Why was it up? I think because not as many people are going into the office, Pete, and they can get away with wearing jeans and casual wear, which is what Abercrombie and Fitch more or less is famous for.
And I'll tell you what else, John. One of the things as I was reading through this to try to figure out why, to your point, why is it up 25% today? And why is it hitting new 52-week highs at 51.90? Well, when you start looking at it, they were so good at literally focusing right on inventories. We hear that a lot, right? Too much inventory, that's a problem. You've got to sell this stuff at a big discount just to get rid of it. And that whole storyline, right? That has been the storyline. Well, I can tell you in this particular case, they actually talked about their inventories and how important that was to them. Their profit margins actually went up. All we've been hearing about from most retailers is it's going down. This one was up. It was at 62.5%. They beat on revenue. They beat on earnings. They did a lot of things the right way. And the first thing you said is the thing I'll finish with. They raised the forecast. So that is always something very important when it comes to earnings. And we got some big ones coming out tonight, or at least one, NVIDIA. I think all eyes are on that because given where that stock is, they're going to have a perfect quarter, in my opinion. They've got to literally knock it out of the park because this thing is 60 PE, 70 PE, whatever it might be. And it's had a lot of volatility, but some new 52-week highs recently. That sounds like a stock that's got to hit it out of the park to me.
Yeah. And Pete, you can't sell what you don't have.
Right.
In other words, if the demand has been so strong, which it has apparently for their AI chips, the fastest chips they've got that really assist with artificial intelligence and doing all these calculations. Well, you can only sell what you've got. The rest of it just goes into backlog. So you can't eat backlog. Look at Boeing. Look at any company that has massive backlogs. They don't just get to say, well, yeah, but look, we've got demand going out 3 years into the future or 2 years or whatever. That's wonderful. But what if people find a better mousetrap between now and then? Are they going to wait? No,
Yep.
they're going to buy the other thing. So I'm not saying I'm a bear, but I am saying that you can only sell what you've got. And I think they probably sold everything they had in the case of NVIDIA.
Yeah.
All right, give us a little sports talk, Pete, to finish us up today.
Yeah, this one's kind of fun, John, because it's something you and I both dealt with. For the people who don't know, John played high school football, college football, NFL football, Chicago Bears, linebacker. He was there with Alan Page, with Sweetness and all the greats that were there. Really had a great experience, a lot of fun. John, how about this, though? Going back to high school, it used to be your senior year, you're really going all out, right? Because you want to have those recruiters coming to your school. They want to see John Najarian playing linebacker. They want to see Pete Najarian playing tailback and linebacker. What are we going to use him to do? And blah, 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 blah. Well, that's changed a little bit in college football recruiting. And here's what I'm going to point out to you, John. So no one's ever heard of a kid by the name of Julian Lewis, right? He goes by Juju, but Julian Lewis, right? So here's why you haven't heard of him. He's in the class of 2026. He got offered so far. Here's the offers that he's got. Bama, Florida State, Georgia, Ohio State, and the list goes on, but he picked USC. Now, this kid lives in Georgia, so that's a huge move. And I'll tell you what, you got to give Lincoln Riley a lot of credit. And one of the things that this kid probably was looking at is, Lincoln Riley's done a good job no matter where he has been, getting quarterbacks not only ready for college football, but ready for the NFL. I mean, by the way, here's the quarterbacks that Lincoln Riley has recruited, gotten, and then he had as quarterbacks at different universities. Caleb Williams, who he brought with him from Oklahoma to USC, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, and a guy by the name of Baker Mayfield, who went first in the draft back in 2018. He might not have been a great pro so far, but let me tell you something. That kid was a stud in college, and that's why he was a Heisman. That's why he was the first pick in the draft. So I ask you this. At what age is this getting ridiculous, John? I mean, I've even heard of kids, and I know of a kid back in Connecticut, 8th grade, was getting offers as a quarterback all over the country. So is there something that we should do, or is this just okay that a kid is committing for when he's coming out of school in 2026 and we're in 2023?
Well, Pete, part of it is you can say you're committed to it, and it goes back to what we just talked about with NVIDIA. You can only sell what you've got. This kid can't sign yet. He can commit to them. He can't sign yet for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which is he hasn't matriculated. Now, you don't have to matriculate. You don't have to graduate from high school to sign. But generally speaking, February 1st, the signing letters start, Pete?
Yeah, they've shifted them around. Some are December now, and then, then they move. Yeah, but yes, yeah.
But I mean, the fact that this kid is a big time stud, which he is why everybody's after him. Maybe you just say, hey, I'm going to take I'm committing to USC without even really being in your heart committing to them. Because again, if you don't get certain grades and so forth, Pete, you can't play Division I football. You got to go get your grades up at a JUCO or whatever. That's junior college, folks, for those of you who don't speak my language. But I think that it's wonderful that Lincoln Riley was able to go out and recruit this kid, Pete. It doesn't mean he's going to USC, because I hope the kid does fabulous academically as well as athletically. I hope he doesn't get any injuries and all the rest. But it doesn't mean he's going to be playing at USC. It's just a lot of headlines for Lincoln Riley and for Juju.
Yeah, it's interesting too, John, because here's a thought that dawned on me as you were talking actually just now. What if, because they've got so much NIL money at USC, and you can do it with high school athletes, by the way, for people who don't know this, What if they're like, well, we'll sprinkle a little bit of that little magic dust over there your way for your sophomore, your junior, and then your senior year, and we'll give you a couple hundred here, a couple 100,000 there, a couple 100,000 there, and then when you get here, just remember Caleb's making $3 million a year here at USC, so you'll probably do okay. I mean, the money is out of control in NIL and college football for the teams who can do that. Not for the teams like my Minnesota that's having a hard time with NIL. They're working on it, but they're not competitive right now when it comes to that kind of money. John, next let's hit another quarterback story. So in the NFL, they start coming out saying, all right, who's going to be your starter? And in most cases, we know that. But in a lot of cases this year particularly, there's a battle going on. And one of the biggest battles of them all probably was down there in Tampa. And you know who happens to be in Tampa right now? Baker Mayfield, who's been in Cleveland. He's been in Carolina. He's been with the Rams. He's kind of been bouncing around a little bit, and so he has not had the success that he wants. This is kind of it for him probably, John. I mean, they made him the starter. They put him up above Trask, and Trask got a second-round draft pick out of Florida is very good. If you don't think he's good, then why was he in front of this guy that the world thinks is so good named Richardson, who's now in Indianapolis? He couldn't beat him out, so that says something about who Trask is and was back in college at Florida. So I think it becomes a very interesting thing for Baker Mayfield. I'm excited for him, John. I want to see the poor kid succeed. He's small, he's this, he's that. But, you know, there was a time where he was great. I mean, he really was great in college. He's got the moxie. He's got everything that you want in a quarterback ego-wise. Now he's just got to prove that he can make those throws on the field. So it's going to be an interesting one. But if he stumbles, how many games can you afford? If you're the head coach, how many games can you sit back and go, you know, I made him the first pick guy. He's going to be our quarterback. But 3 games? Is it 4 games? Or what do you do before you say, Trask, go at it?
Well, I guess it depends on the rest of what Tampa looks like this year, Pete.
Yeah.
If they're stopping people on defense, which, you know, they've had some good defenses when you were there and elsewhere. They've had some good defenses at Tampa. Warren Sapp was one of the big reasons for that way back when. And so is John Lynch. But now you're talking about a team that I don't know how good the defense is, Pete. If the defense is stopping people and they're just not scoring, yeah, then I think they switch sooner than later. And 3 or 4 games is probably the over-under. On the other hand, if the defense is a sieve, then I think he gets longer because they're going to need to score a lot of points.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, if you have a great defense, you can score 21, 24 points and win games. If you've got a crappy defense, you've got to score 38 or 40 points to win games. And we'll have to see exactly what kind of defense shows up for Tampa when the NFL season kicks off.
And the interesting thing about that team, John, is so you've got Baker Mayfield as your starter, and then your backup is Trask. Well, they are nothing alike. I mean, nothing. One of them is, call it under 6 feet, and the other guy's about 6'4", about 230. I mean, these guys are different players, different types of offense fit each one of them probably better. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how well Baker can do. I'm pulling for the kid. I don't even know why. You know, I don't know him. I hear about him. I talk to friends who know him. You know, he's got an ego, but he's also every quarterback I've ever met, John, has the ego of, you know, as big as you've ever seen. And you kind of want that, right? You want the guy who's in there who's so confident that he knows he's going to win. He just doesn't want to win. He's going to win, even if he loses. So, you know, that's what quarterbacks are. That's what they do. And it's going to be an interesting thing. I'm pulling for him, but I agree with you. I think it's 3, maybe 4 games.
Yeah, and hopefully he has a great start.
Yeah.
I mean, plus the kid's a great personality, Pete. I mean, remember all those commercials of him out there with the dust devil sitting there, you know, vacuuming the stands and things in Cleveland because allegedly he lived at the stadium and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But he's a pretty good personality too. I would love to see this kid have some success. And to your point, he is a little bit, you know, not the same runner, but he's a little bit like Russell Wilson.
Yep.
in that, you know, these quarterbacks that are under 6 foot, Drew Brees and a host of others. Then you've got the prototypical quarterbacks, the Tom Brady's or the Trasks or the, you know, Herman or whomever, you know, the big guys that can just gun the length of the field and throw the ball right through the 88, right through the middle of it.
Yeah.
But, well, I think that's going to be cool to watch, Pete. So thank you.
Should be fun.
Folks, we will be back tomorrow with another Rebels Edge. That winds it up for the week for us because we do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 Rebels Edges every week. You can pick it up on Spotify, thestreet.com. We've got a big announcement coming right after Labor Day. And until then, we'll see you tomorrow at 1 for another Rebels Edge.